Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Did we want, I don't know where you're at. Did you want to go ahead and start or wait for?
We haven't started yet. So if you want to go ahead and start, and I just texted him to see if he can come in, but we can go ahead and roll until he comes in.
Okay, and it looks like we're live, so
Yep.
It started. Okay, so now I need an agenda. Hang on. I'll call the meeting to order.
I can share the screen with you. Here, I'll just share the agenda.
I just needed to pull it up. I'm okay.
Okay. Freezing on us, or is she just really still? So we're trying to figure out Charity's technical difficulty.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yep.
Can you see me now? Hear me now? I completely disconnected for some reason, so
Yep.
I'm back.
Yep.
I'm gonna wing it. I'm gonna say I'm calling the meeting to order, and we'll do roll call.
Okay. Trustee Robinson,
Oh, weird. Here.
Trustee Giroux,
Here.
Trustee Erbst,
Here.
Trustee Pomponio,
Here.
Trustee Billups,
Okay, and we'll do flag salute. It's usually next.
Yep.
Anybody have a flag? All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, cool. Thank you, Angie. I have an agenda now. And then we'll do approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And discussion.
Okay, so I sent out the new phase 2 order, the modified order on spectators for sporting events. So talking to our ADs, our principals, looks like we can manage this and maintain the distance and masking throughout. The one question that we had, I guess, or the concern is junior high games at the elementary school is going to be a little bit tighter. To have that many people. So that's our major concern right now, trying to manage the number of people there. But the rest of it with the high school sports, felt like we could pull this off and manage it. So some of the other schools have already started this. I mean, they got a little bit quicker jump on it, had some games last night. They said one of the biggest management issues with it was having two people trying to coordinate where the opposing team versus the home team coming in separate entrances and out separate entrances. So having two people basically at the doors, trying to guide traffic, but I think they can overcome that pretty easily. And I know they've got some signage up and are working on that. So it's just a management thing. So questions on that, I guess. You guys had a chance to read through it, and this was put together by group. The ISBA was doing this, the Administrative Association. There were several groups that were involved with this. ISHA or IHSAA was involved as well. So the governor is aware of this and signed off on it. And I had a Region 2 meeting today with the superintendents in Region 2, and 100% of them were planning on adopting it. So it was going to be consistent throughout our leagues and consistent throughout our region, excuse me. So unless you have questions or concerns or modifications, I mean, that's my recommendation, is to adopt it unless something goes awry.
What do you think about what should we do at the elementary then where it's not as big?
I talked to Ms. Tetweiler today about that, and they were talking about limiting the numbers, doing some more measuring, and really coming up with a number that would be effective there, that we could get people in, because we only do have one side of the bleachers, so there isn't any on the other side. So trying to limit spectators was going to be a challenge in that one, and that was looking at was just reducing numbers. But we don't have that number exactly yet.
So you'll reduce the numbers allowed based on how many you can fit safely within
Yes.
the elementary gym?
Yes. So the
Okay.
12-foot separation distance and 12-foot separation distance was not a negotiable item with the governor.
Mhm.
Within family units can set together, obviously 2 people, whatever it might be, and then 12 feet to the next. So we need to figure out how many we can do on that. We just haven't had the opportunity to do that yet, but that would be our limiting factor. And then we were talking about visiting fans. We wanted to be able to have some visitors come as well. And we were talking about using the balcony area for visitors, bringing them in one door and to the balcony versus home crowd on the bleachers, a different door. So that was kind of our solution, keeping them apart, because we don't have 2 sides.
So I had a question when it talks about the complaint process and that, it said that the administrators, coaches, and athletic directors are the only ones that can file complaints. So what's the protocol on that? Somebody comes up to them and points out, so-and-so's not wearing their mask or not distancing or whatever the case may be. Then what happens? Are they obligated to make a formal complaint then, or what?
So the complaint procedures were put into place if a school was not complying with it. So it's more of a checks and balance on another school, more so than our own. I mean, yes, we need to be looking at our own, but that process is, obviously we try to address it first, at the location. And then from there, that complaint procedure goes to the IHSAA. And then you saw the process of the areas that, the penalties, so to speak, if you didn't comply. So
it's more of a broad, blatant
yes
thing of them ignoring the rules.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I wasn't real clear about.
So one of the things that to have board approval, so we talked about this in our superintendent's meeting today, and some superintendents, and we've had some patrons say, well, this doesn't take board approval, but it does take board approval. It's a legal document, and they were all going to get board approval, but they were kind of jumping the gun and getting the board chair signature, and then they were in their own, and then they were going to discuss it later. But it is a legal document in the way it was set up, and since it is a governor's order, and the way they have the what's it called, what's the page called, the assurance page that they have with the signatures, if you put your board approval on there, well, then it's a completed legal document. So that's why I wanted you guys to have that discussion and ask the questions. But if somebody is blatantly not adhering to it, so for example, if we go somewhere and they're absolutely not adhering to it, well, then we are obligated as a school to talk to those administrators, let them know what we're going to do, and let them know that we're going to have to go ahead and file a complaint. So, and we also have the right to not participate at that venue as well.
Without forfeiting.
Correct.
Read that.
Yes. Yep. And the same for ours. I mean, if they came to us and we were doing that. So yeah, the consistency was the key we were looking at. Across.
And I guess I just wanted to chime in that there's nothing that really says it has to be an overall non-compliance. It says any non-compliance.
Yes.
So if we have a school that comes to our facility and They want everybody masked, and we have 4 parents sitting in the stands without masks. They have every right to file a complaint.
Yes.
Because there's no limitation on what the non-compliance is supposed to be.
Yes.
And with that being said, my caution about all of this was going to be when we had required masking in our district in the fall, we had fans and spectators and family members who were completely non-compliant with our required masking. There are multiple videos and Clearwater Tribune pictures that were in the paper showing people shoulder to shoulder in the stands without a mask, despite our required masking in our school district. And that is the attitude of our community. So if moving forward with this, my request is twofold. Number one, that we require our administrators and coaches to police this. This has to be 100% enforced. They have not wanted to take on that role, but if we're going to expand our visitor policy, it has to be enforced. So if somebody's not wearing a mask, they get asked to put a mask on. If they don't put a mask on, they get asked to leave, because the people who are going to suffer the consequences of this are our students, and that's not fair to them. So I'd rather them play with no visitors than not to be able to play at all because they've had to forfeit their games. So I ask that we actually require policing and make sure that this is enforced. And if we are not able to continue to comply with the masking, that we actually go back to the prior recommendations.
Agreed.
Yep.
I actually don't envy the administrators and the coaches to do this, because I think they're going to be asking people to put masks on all the time.
Agreed. I think it's a tough challenge, and I know there were a couple of games last night, and the administrators that the districts that went and the games that were played, they said everybody was very much in compliance and felt like that everybody was really, because they realize that it's a privilege, and it can be lost.
It is a privilege.
Really easily. So that was good to hear. And the couple of schools that were actually involved with that were schools that were pretty non-compliant. So it was good to hear that people are starting to understand that. So hopefully, and that's what we ask. We ask constituents. I know we have people probably on watching as well. We ask them to, abide by the rules or they won't be attending. I mean, it's very simple. It becomes board policy. And it's also, the governor's protocol. So it's a legal action. Any other questions on it? Those good comments. I agree with you 100%, Charity.
Just think people need to do it if they want to go have the sports continue.
Yep. And that ultimately, I agree. We've said that over and over. The actions in our communities are what's going to affect our kids. We're doing a pretty good job in school of people masking. The kids are masking. I think we're stepping that up even a little bit more. And I think things are. That's the reason that we have had to close school or we have to cancel sports or whatever it might be, is because of that. People are not following the rules. So ultimately, if we want them to play, we need to abide by it.
Yep.
So are we going to set a protocol then, a specific, really, specific protocol for the coaches, administrators, and athletic directors as far as reporting non-compliance?
Yes, I think that we need to be reporting non-compliance, period.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, what's that going to look like, I guess, is what my question is. I mean, is it like I was kind of getting at before, and maybe I didn't put it out there. Like, is it one person not wearing a mask, or is it a group of people not wearing a mask? What does that look like?
It can be down to one. I mean, absolutely.
Okay.
So one of the things that we have tried to do over and over is, resolve it locally. I mean, resolve it there. If you can't resolve it there, well, then it's a bigger issue, obviously. Some of the mentality of some of the ADs and coaches and, some of the fans in all districts has people that don't want to comply, but the consistency across our league and across our region, I think is going to be very helpful, knowing what to expect at every single building is that way. You know, that's the way it is. So that consistency, I think, is going to help a lot. So we would go through that process, and I would formally contact the superintendent of that district as well and let them know what we're doing, you know, that we're going to report.
So it's basically a zero tolerance and they have to
Yep.
report it.
Yep. Otherwise, I think I agree. We'll go back to where it is right now, because it is the single thing that will eliminate our sports at this point, is if we're not following it. So. Yep. So one of the questions that came up today, just to further on this a little bit, was this is talking about IHSAA high school sanctioned events. These are, high school events. So one of the questions came up was junior high. What about junior high events? It's not listed in here. So the workings right now is the governor is actually, it's on his plate of adding junior high to this to match this. So without the junior high change at this point, we are currently doing this. We would like to echo this with the junior high, so it's consistent. So we have our patrons are consistent, because otherwise it gets really confusing doing one thing with junior high and one thing with high school. So we'd like to extend that on through, and it sounds like this next week he will go ahead and do that, is what I'm understanding. That's what we heard today. No guarantees on that, obviously. But I would like to extend that through our junior high so it's consistent.
If they were to add that for the junior high, we'd have to come back and vote on that again too, wouldn't we? So if we did that tonight, we wouldn't have to do that. Is that right, Mike? Is that what you're thinking?
Right. Correct.
Just get it all done at one time.
Well, the consistency, I think, is very key. I think whenever, the more muddy we make the water, the more difficult it's going to be.
Sure. That makes
So
sense.
if we flip over to this change, it's so much more difficult to manage. And I think we need to add in there the limitation when we get the number that we can limit in the elementary gym for junior high games, because I think that's going to be difficult to get, the 26 for each team, basically, and then all the others in there safely and distanced, especially with spectators. So whatever that is, we need, and then we'll send that protocol out so we know for sure. And I'm talking about junior high gym at working at or playing at the elementary school in Orofino. Obviously at Timberline, that's a little different story. So that limiting factor would be the size of seating capacity and safe seating capacity.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion? Everybody good? Okay. So we'll go ahead and move on to action item, which is a motion. Let's see. Action item is the phase 2 governor order modification.
I move that we adopt the phase 2 governor's order modification with the caveats discussed by the board. Is that good enough?
What was that last part, Angie?
With the caveats we discussed?
Okay.
Which were, let's be specific on it so we have them. So the seating capacity at Orofino Elementary School.
Yes.
Okay.
And approval of junior high sports
For the,
when it's added to the order.
And we just add that any sporting activity in any school district facility.
So come again on that.
I just wondered if it would be all encompassing if we just worded it as every sport activity at any district facility.
So you're talking, I guess, sorry, I don't mean to overstep there, Charity. It's your.
No,
your
that's okay.
motion.
I think, so just to follow the rules of the order of the meeting, we have a motion. We should probably second the motion and then add all of this to our discussion. unless Angie wants to take away her motion, because we're kind of in the middle of a motion.
Well, let's finish our discussion and I'll withdraw.
We'll just table the
that.
motion for a second.
Table the motion
Okay.
and let's finish our discussion. Sorry that it wasn't a better motion.
No, that's
How
okay.
do we want to phrase this then?
So I want a clarification from Greg Billups, if you don't mind. You're talking about any activities that's going on as far as, is this additional like a play or anything else that would be going on, or is that what you're talking about?
Anything that's considered an extracurricular activity, I feel like falls under the auspices of this direction.
Okay.
But is that legally covered under this order? Because this order is specifically for high school sports. So the governor's order for schools said no more than 10 people, except for this new modification, which says for high school sports, we will make this exception. But it doesn't say we will make this exception for high school drama and high school band and elementary sports. That's not included. So legally, I'm asking, are we covered if we were to do something like that?
So with the governor's order, looking at it legally, I would say no, the high school is the only thing you can do at this point, with the caveat of, so basically whenever we talked to the governor's office today, they said we can do anything more strict, but we can't do anything less restrictive, if that makes sense. And then it was only geared towards high school athletics. So that junior high portion of that is still currently under the 10 spectators, like what we're currently operating under, is what junior high still is. And then any other activity we have is still under that. So you are correct in what you're saying, Charity, is this is only for high school athletics at this point.
Well, then I guess that's how it should be worded, is just for high school athletic activities.
I think the junior high, if we did it, I think it would be difficult. I mean, I think it would be easier for us to manage, but I kind of feel like I'm backing up on that because it would be difficult for us to, you're right. I think on the legal side of that, it would be difficult because it's laxing the current standards or the current protocol until that changes. And then we would have to meet again and change the junior high.
That should be brought to somebody's attention.
It is. They're
Yeah,
working
I
on
mean,
it. Yeah. Yep.
It's all under the same roof in a lot of schools, and it
Yep.
doesn't seem.
Right. And one of it wasn't talking about volley. I know that's going to be difficult for, patrons, and I'd like to have it consistent. I really would, but I'm not sure how legal we can do that.
Is what it is. Yes.
And I know one of the, volleyball was specifically not mentioned on the order there as well, on the change, and volleyball right now, junior high volleyball is happening, and it was not mentioned on there. So it was just only high school sports that were mentioned. Technicality, I would say.
Yeah, that's going to cause a lot of people to scream and yell because, consistency is one of the things that people expect.
Agreed.
And if we're doing one thing at a high school game and doing something completely different in a junior high game, that's just going to create more problems for you guys in the district office and in addition to whoever wants to point it out to us. We're fully aware right now, if our hands are tied, our hands are tied. I think if we're going to abide by what the state is recommending at this point, that we do it at every event, and I can't see how they, even though they neglected to make a wise decision and include it, I think it's probably a given. I think they probably intended to include it, but because for whatever reason they didn't, it just puts everybody else in an uncomfortable situation. So, it might be going out on a limb, but I think for the benefit of all, if the board agrees, we ought to just make it, I don't know how legally we could be in trouble when we're doing it the same everywhere. I think we ought to just make it district-wide, every event.
So on the actual order itself, and I agree, it would be so much easier to have it junior high and high school the same, and that's what I would advocate for as well. But it says on here, it says student athletes may have up to 2 spectators for both home and away teams, and in the event area, and these include all freshman JV varsity teams, cheerleaders, and wrestlers. On all non-participating, and then it goes on. So it doesn't specifically say that in the limitation of the gathering that it has to be, high school, but it says freshman JV varsity teams, cheerleaders, and wrestlers. It doesn't say junior high. So it would just be, it would be difficult for us to not do it in junior high if we're doing it in high school. More difficult.
What would it take to get that clarified on the governor's order and that, so that we can do it and be legally sound and do it?
So I can tell you that all the other, as far as I could tell, everybody else in the region is planning on doing junior high as well to stay consistent. But to answer your question, Christine, we have that comment in. They have the information. It's got to go through the process as far as junior high. The clarification was this was only high school at this point. So, yeah. But for ease and for what everybody's going to try to do is we're trying to do the same thing everywhere. So, walking a line.
Yeah. It is fairly specific on here.
It's very specific.
And I'm not opposed. So we'd have to look at our schedules and, for the next week or whatever, as far as like junior high, but it sounded like something was going to come out of this in the upcoming week from the governor's office on junior high events.
So we could essentially vote on this part of it for the high school athletics, and then as soon as they get the protocol for the junior high out, then we could vote on that as well.
I would even be, I'm comfortable with if you guys would say as soon as the junior high comes out, we incorporate it, or whatever, we do it when it does come out. Because it could be tomorrow, it could be next week. I don't know that. I know that contact was made. I know that he has it, and I know that that discussion has been happening. So I don't know when it'll come out. And that issue only came up this week. I mean, obviously, when everybody got back to school, you're like, wait a second, what about junior high? So that was.
So are there any high school sports in the Orofino Elementary gym?
There's practices only at this point.
Okay, and this is only for games. This is not for practices, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So our discussion about the elementary gym, we could use that as a separate part of the motion, that when a modification is made for junior high sports, we will adhere to the modification and, except for the limited capacity of our elementary gym for designated junior high sports. Does that make sense? So this,
and we'll have a number by then too.
Yeah.
Does it specifically say high school?
Yeah, the heading of it here.
It says freshman, JV, and varsity. It doesn't say high school, but it says freshman, JV, and varsity. It does not include any junior high.
When I played junior high basketball, we had a varsity squad and a JV squad, in 8th grade and a 7th grade. And, I don't know. It seems to me just an oversight and something that they would have included had they thought it necessitated words. And, I know that it was probably an immediate thing and we're trying to rush it through and didn't even think about it. And I just don't like the idea that, we may have folks coming from out of town to a junior high activity, and we've got to turn them away just because, well, we're doing it at our school, but we're not doing it there. And it's something that everyone expects is going to happen anyways. So legally, I don't see how we could get in trouble. And because of an omission on the part of somebody in the state, if we're using the same facility and the same number of people and it's the same kind of activity, how could they differentiate legally? It doesn't make sense. So I don't fear the legal part of it. I think we ought to do what makes sense. And I think what makes sense is that what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and we include all activities.
So one of the things Ms. Tetweiler put up here on the chat box, I don't know if you guys saw that we don't have anything scheduled till the 26th.
Right.
It's going to give us some time, and our next board meeting is the 25th at this point anyway.
Is that the same?
Okay.
Is that the same
That's
for?
That's just what I was going to try to find out if I knew that at Timberline.
So
That
in a
would
sense,
help us a bunch.
we could just take care of this now and then deal with the other later.
Right. That would take a lot off of that. I hadn't put that together. So let me see if I can get a hold. You probably look at their schedule real quick.
Mrs. Tetweiler's raising her hand.
Oh. Can we put her in here so she can answer that? I bet she would know.
Sure.
Sorry, you guys.
There.
Wrestling
And-
also, am I on?
Yes.
Okay. Junior high wrestling uses the high school facilities. So that should not be too much of an issue. It's just junior high volleyball. I have a meeting with Denise and Mark Mosier next Tuesday, so we can go in and measure and see what we can look at. I don't know if that helps answer your questions, Eddie.
Do you happen to know if there's anything scheduled at Timberline before you guys are scheduled?
I do not have their calendar on mine. Oh, wait.
Corey has her hand raised.
Yeah.
Oh, Corey's got it. Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, we don't have anything till the 20th either.
Till the 26th.
So no junior high scheduled activities until after the next board meeting.
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
That'll give everybody time to plan, figure out how many
Yeah.
people they can fit in, those kind of
Yep.
things.
That's good. And we'll make sure we address that. I have a note here. We'll make sure it's on there. And we should know before then. And if you guys want to go ahead and put that in the motion that, when it does come out, if it's before our meeting, we'll implement it. I'm comfortable with that if you guys are comfortable with that. Because I think all they'll do is they'll tack on, when you look at this one, it says high school athletic plan. I think they'll say, and one of the reasons, I know, Greg, you were talking about that, but one of the reasons I know that they were involved is because they were only sanctioned events. That's where that started. So, this is one of those things that's growing as it goes, obviously. So I don't think their intention was to leave it out. It's just that's where it began. So no fault on that.
I agree. An obvious oversight that comes when people are trying to do things in a hurry.
Right.
Okay.
Good.
So any further questions or discussion points?
So the caveats that you were talking about, Angie, and I know that Charity, you had a couple as well. So you were talking about, obviously the junior high thing, we can say seating capacity, and when, if we adopt that, or when it comes in, we can adopt it. And then you had, Charity, you had required policing by the admins, and then what else did you have? Oh, for the
coaches.
Yeah. Can't even read my own writing. From the prior recommendations of, and we were also talking about reporting. That's the word I was looking for. Sorry.
Okay.
So required compliance and required reporting. And if we're not obtaining compliance from our own, then we return to the prior stage 2 guidelines. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, I'll try this again. I move that we adopt the new phase 2 governor's order modification regarding high school sports while requiring administration and coaches to both police and report any non-compliance. A breach of compliance or reporting will require us to return to our previous phase 2 guidelines, and we will adopt junior high standards as written by the state when they come out. Does that cover our?
I think if you don't mind finishing that sentence with the limitation of the gym size,
Oh, yes, and
that's the main.
the overarching rule of all of that would
Yeah.
be limiting attendance based on gym size.
And I think Orofino Elementary is the only one we'll have an issue with that.
Okay, well, I'll second that. This is Greg.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to approve the governor's stage 2 order modification for high school sports with the added caveats.
So here they are. We'll just list them. There's required
Okay.
policing. So required policing, required reporting. We had,
Automatic
Yep.
return
yep,
to stage
Yep.
2.
right. Auto return if whatever, if it's
Non-compliant
violated,
or
whatever.
reported.
Non-compliant. Yep.
Mhm.
And then adopt junior high when it comes out with the limitation of safe seating at OES. That was it.
Okay,
Just
all
5
in
of them.
favor? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that.
Okay,
So I'm going to meet with the ADs and principals tomorrow and make sure they have all this in hand, and we'll go from there. So non-compliance from, our own coaches and ADs and that, I mean, it's a personnel issue at that point because this is policy
Mhm.
and law.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
And I will
Okay, very
we'll
good.
address it accordingly. Okay.
Mhm. Thank you.
thank you guys.
Yeah.
And then we'll convene again in a few weeks for the regular January board meeting.
Yep, the 25th is the regular because the 18th is a holiday and we moved it to the following Monday. So we'll get the
Yep.
agenda out and we'll go from there.
Sounds good.
Good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all for your time. I appreciate
you.
the short notice doing this. Thank you.
All right. it
Have
was
a good
late.
night.
All right.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
You
Good
too.
night.